and welcome to this week's fun interview here on the ins and outs of live streaming. This is Andrew Can. I'm Chantel Hills. Andrew, hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you going? It was a bit of a frazzle morning this morning, running around, and my dog was making weird noises, and I had to like, what are you doing? And run out and deal with that like 5 minutes before you joined in. It's been a week.
Fair
How
enough.
has your week been?
My week has been good. So I was telling Chantel off air that I just moved into this space. So I'm just like getting used to like downsizing. So for me, I had a much bigger space before, but I had better amenities because I don't live in my office, although my girlfriend may argue I do. But it's just been a really fun week. Before the show, I had to find my gear. So this is a free tip. When you move, make sure you label where you put stuff. Otherwise, you're going to be frantically throwing things everywhere, finding one piece of gear
that you desperately must have, or
Of
you
course.
have no camera.
Exactly. The Camlink 4K is pretty important if you want a good camera.
Yeah. I also vouch for the Camlink 4K. I actually think I got my Camlink 4K because of your video on the Camlink 4K.
Well,
I think you I'd watched a few videos, but I think yours was the one that I just buy.
Well, thank you. And
You're
I think
welcome.
that goes into a little bit about what I do, which is I try to help people overcome obstacles,
Yep. So speaking about what you do, Andrew, can you tell us a little bit of your history and your background and how it is that you ended up on YouTube and creating video?
Yeah, so I have been on YouTube technically as a user since 2006. I found the website when I was very young, but I've been creating
You
content.
didn't use it when it was the dating site when you were
Oh no, I
very
wasn't
young,
that
did you?
old. Like that'd be
Okay.
like
Just
like that
checking.
was a little bit earlier than me. No, I used it when people were like, if I can get to 100,000 subscribers one day, I'll be big. And now look at
Yeah.
where we are.
That's right. Isn't 100,000 now considered a small channel?
Depends who you speak to. I know most people consider the small channel range anything less, and then you're considered medium now at 100,000, unless you
Okay.
compare it to TikTok numbers, but they're different
Oh,
games
God.
completely. But my
You can't
journey,
compare TikTok.
well, I mean, I would say they are two different platforms unless you're looking at the short end of content, and then you will understand the pun. But more importantly, I just got into YouTube because I always enjoyed telling stories, and I think that YouTube is like the most natural progression of video storytelling. And I was telling Chantel a little bit that when I was in college, I went to film school, so I knew I always wanted to do video production in some level. And at the time, this was 2012, so we weren't sure where digital was heading. And this is when like all my professors are like, hey, we have the tried and true traditional TV and film that's never going to die, which is a little funny in hindsight. And then we have this new experimental digital stuff. And they're like, it's things like this Netflix thing and things like that. So you have different like viewpoints. And obviously, I was interested in YouTube. So I was like, digital YouTube would count as that. So I went that route, and in it, I learned a lot of stuff on how to light videos, how to tell different stories. And so for me, I just kind of fell in love with video because I've realized how powerful it is compared to other ways of communicating and storytelling.
That's amazing, because like we've talked to a few people here on this channel and their goal wasn't digital media, it was something else, and then they kind of found themselves here. And I mean, there's probably better ways to put that, but it was like to hear that you actually made a conscious decision in your education and training that you wanted to move into digital media. That's actually really refreshing. I was
Yeah.
surprised. Yeah.
I think, 2012 is almost a decade. It is a decade, depending on what point of the year. So
Yeah.
it's interesting because back then, YouTube, people are like, what is this thing? And I mean, to some people, they're just like, there are still some people out there who don't know what YouTube is, but it's so amazing how far we've come in the decade where it's like, you're a what to, oh, you're a YouTuber. That's awesome. So I
Yeah.
think that is like the natural thing. And I know there are people out there who might want to be, I find nowadays we're trying to get away from just a YouTuber to be a content creator because we don't want to be
Yeah.
tied to one platform.
Because is it the term YouTuber that's being associated more with people who are like vlogging or pranking? And I'm finding that maybe it's just the content I watch, but I'm finding there's a lot more sort of serious content coming in as well, like help content and things like that.
I definitely think that's true. I think, at first a lot of people had like platform loyalty, but then as they started growing their business, they're like, it's great, I'm loyal to this platform, but there are other ways to do this thing. So I
Yeah.
think that's kind of what happened over time.
Yeah. So you use YouTube not just for fun and watching, like you did when you very first started watching, like back in the not dating app site, but deep dark ages of YouTube. You've been watching for a long time. You started creating. What was your first video that you created?
Back then, I mean, I created probably 2009, so I would have been probably creating. I was really into like kinetic typography, so I was just like learning how to animate text in interesting ways, and so I'd do music videos, which are completely against terms of service. Don't
I was
recommend
about
it.
to
You'll
say,
lose your
geez,
channel.
wow.
But back when it's kind of like what we see with TikTok now, where it's still kind of this wild west. We don't really know the laws. Like it hasn't hit it yet. Like Twitch
Yeah.
had a renaissance where before like copyright laws caught up to it, and even YouTube. So obviously nowadays I would not recommend that, but you create what you were inspired by. And that's why I
Yes.
tell people that, it's important to watch content outside of what you do, because you can learn a lot. And that doesn't
Absolutely.
have to just be like from YouTubers, TikTokers. You can watch films, you can watch TV shows, even documentaries. Like you can be inspired from anything or everything. So don't ever limit your intake.
That's actually another refreshing thing, because quite often we're hearing people like stop consuming and start creating. And for me, I need to consume to be inspired to create, if
Yeah,
that makes sense. And I think it's good that, I mean, obviously there has to be a balance, because there's only
of
so many
course.
hours in a day. I cannot consume for 15 hours and then expect to be able to do work.
For sure. And I think what I learned was like there is that balance. For me, what I think a lot of people rely on, and this is something I learned in film school, like the difference between amateur and professional is an amateur will only create when they are motivated, and a
Yeah.
professional will be disciplined enough to keep creating. That was something my film school teachers, there's a lot of
Wow.
truth to that.
That just
It's
hit me really like,
and I fall victim to it. I'm not going to say that I never am like, I'm always motivated. And there are some downsides, like being so disciplined that you create even when you don't want to can lead to burnout. So, of course,
yeah,
balance is the key to everything.
yeah,
But within that, I think that the reason people say you need to create is because some people, they just never start. And
yeah.
at that
That's true
point,
as well. Yeah,
I always use a sponge theory where like a sponge with too much water is useless. And that's when people absorb too much content, but they also never wring it out to like actually become, full of water again. And in
yeah.
content creation, sometimes people just never create. Like I've known creators who are like, since 2016, they're like, I'm going to finally make a video. I'm like, oh, it's been 6 years, guy. Let's go.
It's like, let's do it. Like, I'm not going to judge you that it's taken you 6 years to put out that short, but
Let's go.
let's do it. Hit enter. One of the there's this video that I've watched. Jack Conti, Patreon guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he put it out on his channel, and it was the difference between publishing, like producing to publish, but also or creating to create a finished thing.
Mm.
And how he was like, he would keep tinkering and tinkering and tinkering with something, and it would never be ready for upload, but he had to get things out. So he had to do a mindset flip, which was start creating to publish it, not to have a finished thing. And I thought about my dad, who's a painter, and he's like, oh yeah, he goes, if I don't give the painting like to its intended person, I could just sit there like, oh yeah, it needs another insect. Oh yeah, that leaf needs a dewdrop. Like he's like, I could just keep looking at it and just seeing more and more and things. And what's your take on the whole, not so much perfectionism, because I'm not the biggest, I'm learning I'm not the biggest believer in perfectionism, but in that whole not getting started because or getting started and never actually getting anything out. Like, do you have a tip? I'm trying to get there.
I understand what you're saying.
Thanks.
So For me, I think that it's super important to remember a few things. Like when I hear perfectionism, I think that what I usually see with at least myself, and I always say that a lot of this applies to me, but if you relate, I'm very happy to try to be that. But for me, what I learned is that done is better than perfect. And
Yes.
sometimes perfect will never come. Like
Yeah.
things I thought were perfect 3 years ago, I look at now and I'm like, why did I think that was it? There's so much better ways I could do that. But that is your experience overtaking your fear. And a lot of times, what I found is like perfectionism, if you work on something long enough to where you think it's perfect, you've learned it long enough to know all its flaws. But it's
Yeah.
within those imperfections, within those moments you can improve, where your community can activate. That's where, like, a lot of times people want something so polished that they forget that if you over polish something, you actually can start damaging it. And I think that that's something that a lot of people don't realize when it comes to perfectionism, is that you can
Mm.
polish something so much it becomes damaged. And
Yeah.
I think that it can be damaging to not post just as much as it is to work on one piece forever. Because here's the thing, that piece that I could spend 40 hours my entire work week working on, it might get 2 views. And I
Yeah.
have to live with that reality. And so
Yeah.
when I say done is better than perfect, it means that I can move on to the next thing and I can learn. And I've like the content I created nowadays compared to when I started on the public facing YouTube channel that most people knew me for is night and day different.
Gosh, because like you're right. As people, we do change and we do grow, and our experiences make it so that our next step is better.
Mhm.
And that's, I think that's the ultimate goal. Is, I mean, that's my whole business ethos, is to make the next thing less crap than the last. That's actually written on a wall. But I think it's like, it's one of those things that it's really hard to sometimes, knowing it's not perfect, but it's still educational and useful and helpful to somebody, and letting it go, letting it be. I actually think live video, like, just to, pull this in, live video is one of those amazing things, because you can't help but let it be, because it's already out there. Like,
For sure.
me floundering a question at the start. Like, I think anyone who's watched this series now should be used to this. I flub all the questions. It's what I do. I have them written down, and yet I'm like, I don't want to ask it like that. So, like, you use live video fairly regularly in your business and in your content that you create. What was it that made you decide, like, as a film guy, like editing, getting everything sort of lit just how you wanted it? What made you decide that live video was actually useful for you?
For me, it came from necessity of my old work, which we wanted to try live. And this is also at a point where YouTube was, this is before people started breaking live in ways that they shouldn't, like streaming full episodes of TV shows when they didn't own it. But back then, yeah, of course, anytime I bring up this point, it's like, it was great. And then people abused it. But I mean, here's the thing, right?
Isn't That's the
Live,
nature of the internet, isn't it?
it
It's
is.
fantastic, and then someone abuses it.
But live video lets us interact with people in ways we can't. Like I see my C Prince, I see Kathy Breyer, I see, people in the chat who are asking
Yeah,
questions, who have opinions. And that's something that you can kind of get that with a published video, but it's after the fact. And there's a
that's right.
real meaningful connection speaking with people live. Because sometimes you can go even deeper than you want to in a video. Like if you're doing shorts and you go live, well, then all of a sudden, a thing from a short piece of content you can expound on. Like,
Yeah.
that's something that I enjoy full-heartedly about live that I really can't get in a pre-recorded video because there's only so much I can do.
Sorry, I just had a little glitch here, and it was just like you stopped talking, and your face froze. And I'm like,
Oh,
uh-oh. So hopefully that wasn't for everybody. No, it was just you. I just checked. Uh, um, I find that for live, for me, when I'm doing it, like when I'm preparing it, and you can't just hit live and just expect 5,000 people to turn up. What is your feeling on um, talking to yourself, or talking to, because there's a lot of people who are scared to go live because they don't want to just talk to themselves. They don't feel that that's sort of worth their time. What is your feeling on that?
I've always found this one very interesting because a lot of times it comes from people who have had 200 to 300 videos. And
Yeah.
that is just them talking to themselves to edit later. So it's the same argument in different ways. I think that understanding that when you start on YouTube, you're technically creating with the
Mm.
expectation of maybe very few people. So going
Yeah.
live is the same thing. For
Yeah.
me, I got used to it because I was a gamer, right? And I was doing Let's Plays. I still do them to this day. And that's just speaking to myself about what I'm doing on screen. So live streaming for me was just a natural evolution of that. So
Yeah.
I would say if you're afraid to speak to yourself, remember when you're recording any kind of content, technically you're speaking to yourself. It's just you're doing it a lot longer with zero breaks. So you have to be okay with that.
And you can't go, oh, I'm going to try that again.
I mean, you could. I don't
Like
know.
out loud.
I don't know how people would react to it in the chat, though.
Yeah, that replay value right there. We actually have a question in the chat for you from NYC Prince. He's saying he remembers seeing Andrew on a YouTube live stream a couple of months ago. What type of niche are you in, and why did you choose that one?
I'm actually in multiple niches, and they all serve different purposes, right? So way I actually came on YouTube in like 2013 was through gaming. It was on a gaming channel because back then I didn't want to show my face, which nowadays is a little funny if you know that I've been face forward since about 2015. So that's what, 7 years now. But back then I started with gaming, and that was my first niche, and that was my main channel. Eventually I went and started being on camera because I wanted to try things out for film, and it's expensive to hire other people. It's very cheap to try and experiment with content on yourself. So like lighting techniques, sound things, it was a lot easier for me to do it. So the niches I'm in are I'm in gaming on my Let's Play channel, on my personal channel, Andrew Kant, where you can find most of the stuff that is in content
Link is
creation
in
of
the
all
description.
forms. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Also, while you're down there, don't forget to subscribe, ring that bell. But in all seriousness, I would say that my main like value proposition is I help online content creators of any form, whether you're vertical, horizontal, live stream, etc., overcome the hurdles that stop them from creating. Because my like firm and fundamental belief in like content creation is that if I can, you can too. And that doesn't need to be me, Andrew Can. That can be Chantel. That can be you watching. So I think that that is the niche I'm in. I am in the filmmaking niche, helping creators, because when I was in film school, I had a few creators that helped me when my professors could not. And if I can give back, I think I've kind of gone full circle there.
That's awesome. That was a great question, NYC Prince. I've just pulled my own monitor out of my ear. So it's like so professional. So Andrew, you've got, you know, you've gone through a few different channels. You've worked for different companies doing different things. Right now, while you still have your YouTube channel and you're going live and you're doing all your bits and pieces, you have a day job as well. What makes you decide to juggle, to do everything? Is it just money, or is it security, or like is it passion for the day job? Like what is it that made you decide not to go full-time YouTube?
I'm at a point where I definitely could go full-time YouTube. However, I'm a firm believer. I even in my old job where a lot of people consider me a YouTube expert, I've been on channels, I've grown channels with millions of subscribers now. For me, I don't believe I've learned everything I can in terms of business. And I think that the more and more you take this serious, I'm very young. I'm 27. So I'm not in a rush. I've seen so many people go full-time too early and burn out. So for me, my mental health is a huge reason of not going full time, because that can be exhausting when you have to rely on one thing. My goal right now is if my YouTube income ever passes my current, 9 to 5, that's the moment to do it. And the thing is, it has to do it more than a year. A lot of people make the mistakes. Well, it did this year. If you've been on the internet as long as I have, or as long as we have here,
This year is not next year.
Exactly. And once you have a little bit more, you can do a lot more. And also it's nice to have, multiple sources of income, and I can have fun and create and not have to stress that this video has to be the best it can be and reach new audiences.
Because I need to make rent.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, I make money even outside of my 9 to 5. I do consulting. Like I've been around YouTube for so long that if you know how YouTube works, you actually know a lot. And live is one of those huge things where, like, at first I was consulting on how to grow YouTube channels. Lately, people have asked me to consult on how to do live streaming. So you never know what people will know you for. And it goes back to my NYC Prince is like question, like you can be in many niches and you never know what people know you for.
Absolutely. So that's actually amazing, because a lot of people, their ultimate goal is like full-time YouTube. Like they're trying to get there, like pound and pound and pound and trying to get to the full-time YouTube. And like what you're saying is very it's very sensible from Auntie Chantel, Andrew. I'm very proud of you for having that answer. But because people do forget that just because your YouTube income is enough this month doesn't mean it will be next month or it will be the month after. You don't just hit it and stay there. It's a constant effort to change things up and to follow the new things into YouTube. So last year, YouTube put out this great announcement where they're talking about all these amazing new tools for live stream, new moderation tools, rating tools, all sorts of, they're not calling it rating, aren't they? But rating tools and all these sorts of things. Chantel's, Twitch gaming days are coming back. But it's all these things that they're bringing in that I'm putting this, that they've gleaned from other platforms that have worked for other platforms, and they're bringing them into YouTube. To me, that was like, oh yeah, excellent. YouTube's really finally going to focus on live streaming, because they're opening all this thing up. What was your opinion when you saw all those announcements come out?
I think that anytime there's a competitor to any platform, we as creators win. And I know some people are criticizing, oh, well, Twitch has had this for years, or even Mixer had this feature. But you have to remember, and I tell people this with the YouTube, any change they make is at scale. Like, if it affects, there's 2.4 billion, at least at the last, time YouTube released it. This is like people visiting the site monthly. That's if you do the math, there's about 8 billion people, 2.4, that is a lot of people. So any change, even small, affects so many people. So I think it's a great thing that YouTube is finally out of state where they've changed enough of their older back end, because a lot of people forget YouTube's an older website compared to some of the newer ones. So anything they change, they also have to change out all the old stuff. I remember when people were like, I'll never use the YouTube Studio beta. Now they're like, why did I ever think the old wave is better? So,
also it's gone.
That too. But like nowadays, people aren't complaining about that. So the truth is, I think it's a win for us as creators when YouTube, learns from other platforms and sometimes copies.
Well, I mean, like it's in a way, it's kind of like the beta test was done somewhere else.
Yeah.
It's they've proven this is something that people like and they use. How can we incorporate it with our own ethos in our own environment? And there's some differences, there's some changes.
Sure.
So one of the things I hear, like when I'm talking to like my clients, is that they're like, oh, isn't live streaming just for gamers? And trying to like explain that it's not, but then at the same time explaining that I gleaned a lot of what I know from live streaming from gamers and like bringing things in from different niches, like you were saying before. What would you say to somebody who said that question, like said that to you, like that statement, like live streaming is for gamers?
That is one way to view it. I would say let's study what the gamers do, right? They set out for an objective, finish a game or win matches, whatever the kind of game they're playing. How can you do that for your own content, right? So like if I'm a filmmaker, one of the streams I did recently was I wanted to show 10 pieces of gear that I use for every live video, right? And that had a clear objective. It had midway points, it had natural breaks. How can you do that for your content? If you're in the cooking niche and you want to show what you use to cook with, well, then that's your game point objectives, right? And that also helps you overcome the fear of going live. A lot of times people think they just have to go live and they don't have a plan. So I would say if you think it's just for gamers, that isn't a bad place to start. But what do gamers do? They have objectives.
That's a fantastic way to think about it.
Exactly. Learn from what you know.
Yeah. So we've got gamers who are live, educators like us who are live. What other areas do you think like people could benefit from being live?
Oh, there's so many different ways. Like I've seen a lot of like I said, I'm a consumer of many different kind of content. And I was on the train the other day, and this was just when I was heading to San Diego. And what I noticed was someone was watching a live stream, and this isn't something I would look for in a live stream, but it was a live stream of someone like replacing under the sink completely. And they were so engrossed. They were chatting, they were on their phone. And you realize like anything can be a live stream. It's just how can you be creative to do it? And
Yeah.
that's the hard part. A lot of times what I found, and this goes to myself, like I
Mm.
have a stream I'm doing coming up here soon because my community voted for it, is I wanted to challenge myself. And so I'm going to be answering YouTube questions while cooking. Now, I'm notoriously not a cook, but the
I
challenge
like that.
of
Notoriously not a cook.
exactly. My I make my 10 meals very well, and my girlfriend said you don't need any more. So
So you
uh
went, cool.
but
Lean
jokes
back.
aside, she enjoys cooking, and that's, I think, her nice way to say I don't think you should continue trying this.
Please do
But
not destroy any more food. It is expensive.
pretty much, especially in the States nowadays. But jokes aside,
Yeah.
I would say that a lot of times trying stuff new and live
Yeah.
is also a great way to experiment. It's
Yeah.
not as much pressure as a recorded video. And sometimes you'll find that trying something new in a live makes sense to do in a video, right? Like
Yeah.
that 10, like when I went really deep on 10 things I use to stream every time, well, I can make 5 things I use to stream, 5 more things I use to stream. And that's pre-recorded content. And then I can, in that video, say, hey, if you want to watch and see a really in-depth version of this, check that link in the description. So all of a sudden I'm thinking of ways that I can keep people invested, keep people engaged and watching more content.
Yeah. That's great. So moving a little, just a little, we've got gear, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm looking at your microphone. I know people can see that we've got clear cameras. When people are very first going into live streaming, one of the hurdles is gear. They don't have the right gear. They don't have the right technology, blah, blah, like blah, blah, blah. No, it's not blah, blah, blah. But they've got these issues around the gear. What would you say to somebody like for very first live streaming to try it out? What would be your suggestions?
Use your phone. A lot of people don't know this because they know me for my gear and they know me for like certain looks. But I went live at an event on my smartphone, and it was an experiment for me. This was when YouTube announced the feature. I was at Social Media Marketing World 2017 or 2018. I believe it was 2018. I just went live on my phone. All I had was a window and my phone, and 50 people showed up. And obviously, I had built an audience, so they were also like, why is he going live? And this is right when the feature drops, so it's not going to be the same nowadays. But the thing is, all you need is a phone. It doesn't have to be the latest phone either. This is a Samsung S22 Ultra, but it can be a phone from years ago. I have an iPhone 6 that I did video with because like I couldn't find a camera. No one knew it was a phone from 2014. They just knew the camera quality was good enough. If you have a window and a phone, you can go live right now.
That's awesome. So
also internet, that's important.
yeah, you've got to have decent internet. So in your opinion, what is a good upload speed? So just briefly, when you're going live, your upload is more important than the download, but you do need both. So what would be your bare minimum? Like you would look at it and go, yeah, look, I can't go live with that.
I mean, I go by what YouTube recommends or whatever like platform you're on. Like I know YouTube, I don't know their current numbers, but I can quickly see that. But for me, if I have 5 up, that's enough to go at least 720p, and 720p for a live stream is enough. I actually think if you're under 1,000 subscribers, don't quote me on this. I know that or 100 subscribers, you can go live, but there's some limits nowadays on YouTube. So it may not matter as much as you think.
I don't think it's a 720p limit. It's if you're under 100 subscribers and you're going live, you can have however many subscribers you have plus 25 more as viewers. Yeah.
And it's funny because back in the day, no one, was thinking about going live, but now you can. And I think that's also a good thing that more people can go live earlier. And I think that to answer your question, I think 5 is enough, but obviously look at what a platform recommends, see what you like quality wise, because it can also like bit rates are interesting. Like you may not have the same quality
bit rates
you're
are important.
expecting.
And that was something I was chatting with someone about the other day, was how everyone focuses on the upload speeds, but your bit rate is also important. Like just to nerd out just a little bit on an information, it might be a little bit information overload. But YouTube does have recommended bit rates, and if you go over those, they just clamp it down, and if you go
Yes.
under them, you get grainy. So it's not always your upload speeds.
100%. And that, I think people don't understand, like, it's better to learn it now. Just even if you save it to when you need it, like bookmark it, save it. It's good to know now, so when later comes and you need it again, you're ready.
Yeah. Yes. Learning all the things so you're ready when you want to use them. So we've got our upload speeds, we've got our mobile phone. If someone wanted to next level after their phone, they feel confident enough to go live again, what would be your recommendation of first piece of equipment to buy?
Honestly, for me, if it comes to it as a microphone, I think people disregard how important good audio is. So there are microphones that are less than $50 that are USB that can plug into a computer or phone that sound incredible.
Yeah.
And I always say start with audio,
Yes.
because you can do so much. Like one of the videos I want to do is how to get like a killer streaming setup for under $100, which
Oh, wow.
is really doable. But a lot of times people will put in their heads that it isn't. Like,
Yeah.
but of course you got to learn how to use gear, right? Like a window and then some like professional diffusion. You can get diffusion sheets for $10. A window is free.
I was going to say, like, having your window there is fine, but you don't want to have it mid-afternoon sun blaring in with the blinds up. You've got to understand that, like, if you look at my previous video, like my very first videos on my other channel, you can see I forgot the rules. My background's lighting in theater, but I forgot the rules, and I just had the glass sliding door open. So I'm like this white glowy thing giving very important information. So I've left them because I look like a ghost and it's cool. But understanding diffusion and angles and which sun is better. So if you're sitting next to a window, what would be your top tip for somebody to be able to utilize that natural light?
The first thing I would say is shoot, as you learned, is shoot towards the light. So there's actually a window here. Hold on, let me see if I can
Hang on, I'll make you
do
big.
just a bit of an experiment, right? So like right now, you mentioned that afternoon sun. You will see that I am wearing pants. So thankfully, I did that today, right?
I'm so happy.
I'm just making you so proud of me today. So even this, right? This is going into that look you said is a little bit too much. And I agree with you. This is not what I would do. But luckily,
it's not ideal.
No, but there are different ways you can change this, right? Like I know that right now I have the window open very much so. So if I play around with it, right? This is live. So beauty of live, that's the wrong way. But like I can change just a little bit, and this is a little bit better. Now, obviously, I don't know how I feel about the streaks of light coming in, but there's more I can do. I can change camera settings. So if you have a camera that lets you, you can change the settings in the back.
Yeah.
So for me, I know I have my ISO really high. This is definitely a flattering angle, I'm sure. But
we're learning.
We are learning. Oh, that is zoomed in.
That's very close.
But you can see.
Sorry, I haven't posted in a while.
But it's true. I am sorry. Jokes aside, I can lower my ISO or raise it because I.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden,
these are functions that you can actually do on a phone as well. Like a lot of phones have these options.
And
all of a sudden you have skin color back again.
I do, believe it or not. And so, I can close this some more. I now have lost all color, but again, it's balance, right? Find a happy medium. Like this with good audio is enough. It's not perfect. There are ways we can improve it. But with the sun, you can do a lot. Now, another thing, of course, limit of the sun. If you want to go live late at night, maybe not a good thing because you don't have sun. But of course,
you can have that window wide open.
You can have it wide open unless you have weird moonlight. But even with an external light like this, I've now balanced myself a little bit better. So obviously, I probably close this all the way. So
because you do have your light.
I do have lighting, but it still helps. And despite these little rays, which you can tell, I definitely need to.
You got to get those. You got to get your curtains up.
I do, but that's the beauty of being in a new space.
You get to play. You get to play. My new space, what I'm looking at is packing blanket. And
For
it's
sure.
just so I've got control because it's mid-morning here, and this window that I'm at, like there's a window right here, it is insane mid-morning sun. Beautiful in winter when you just want to sit in here and work, but terrible for anything else. Like, don't sit in here in summer, you'll die. You'll it's a little oveny roast box. So being able to utilize the free sun with some really basic adjustments. So obviously you've got a blind on that. If there's no blind and the curtains will not allow you to diffuse it, you said that there's diffusion paper that you can use.
Yeah, you can get diffusion sheets from Amazon. You can get like a shower liner, which a lot of times they have, it's quick, like cheap diffusion.
Yeah.
There are ways you can do it. It's obviously maybe not something you bring on film set. Maybe you're just really confident in your ability, but good enough goes back to, it doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be good enough.
Yeah. I love that. And I love how we just like, let's just go with it. That's the magic of live stream. It's just like, this wasn't the plan, but we're going with it.
100%.
Yeah. Oh, I should probably, do this. Sorry, I was making sure we could see what you were doing with your light and then forgot to change things back. So
Hey,
in
no
honor
worries.
of Andrew, it's time to hydrate.
Thank you. If you see a Nick Nimmin and it's been a couple of minutes since he's hydrated, please let him know. It's funny because that started as a joke, because Nick once told me, I don't drink enough during lives. I'm like, I'll make sure you do. Now I'll join a stream and like, I'm not even there. People are like, hydrate, Nick. And I'm like, good. My job is done.
Yeah, I actually have a timer for when I'm modding in Nick's streams that lets me know that it's been like 40 minutes since he's had a drink. So I'm like, hashtag hydrate.
But even that.
And so it might take him 10 minutes for the comment to come up. So I know at least he's having a sip every hour.
Good. Because sometimes Nick forgets. But that goes to what we were talking about earlier. If you don't want to go live right away, study. There's nothing wrong with studying people you admire. Don't steal. There's a huge difference between studying and stealing. And that goes, there's ways you can put your own twist on it. A lot of people will say, is YouTube oversaturated? And I say, if the world's not oversaturated, YouTube isn't. So just remember, when you're studying, look at what you like, look at what you don't. I think Nick has a great show. Don't like that he doesn't hydrate, so I make sure to hydrate.
I actually like, I've always, because my live streams go for 2 hours, not Nick's 3+ craziness. And I've always made sure I've had drinks, but it's sort of been since I've started watching your streams and you jumping into Nick, and it's just like, I may have a coffee because I do love coffee in the morning, and it's still morning here. But I'm like, I always make sure there's water now, because if you're going to be talking for a crazy amount of time, or even half an hour, and you're nervous, your body will naturally get parched. Because it will be reabsorbing everything back into itself. Like, you are scared. And what happens to your body when you are scared?
Well, depending, you usually use more resources because your heart beats faster, things like that.
Yeah. So having water, and like, I know there's a lot of people who are like, don't drink on camera, don't do this on camera, don't do this on camera. I'm like, mate, I'm sitting here for 2 hours live. People are going to think there's a problem if I'm not having a sip every now and again.
For sure. And I mean, obviously in an edited video, I'd argue maybe don't have a drink of water in the middle of it, unless that's your thing. But if you're live for hours, I absolutely think it's fine. And like, if you ever watch TV shows, like a lot of times, like if like competition shows up, water there, they just do it between takes.
That's
obviously, if you're live, maybe have a way that there is an in between takes. Maybe you have someone else go full screen, and you're just like drinking water in the background. You're just hydrating. You're like, oh no, it's been 50 minutes.
Also, make sure you're switching it to the right person. I was interviewing Justin Brown a few weeks back, and I switched it to him to have a drink, and realized I'd switched it to me. So and this is the thing. I think it's going to sound so counterintuitive. Don't take yourself so seriously when you're live streaming. Things happen, mistakes happen, glitches happen where it's nobody's fault. Andrew, what's your way that you deal with like live stream mishaps?
This comes from my old job where I went live with multiple people at events, right? So I learned really early that whatever you think will go right will go wrong immediately. If you've seen some of those streams, they're funny in hindsight, but man, I was not funny at the time. But the thing is, things can go wrong, but be able to adapt to them. Be able to understand, hey, I may not be able to go live tonight because of an issue I can't fix, but I have to come and bring that energy even better for the next stream. And so if things go wrong, that's fine. Acknowledge them. Do better next time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I just had a thing go wrong, and I'm just moving myself to be behind my little name here. I had a drink and didn't all make it into my mouth. So we'll just hide over here behind my name. So like my brain is totally fried now because I've got water on my shirt and I'm trying not to focus on it. So obviously I don't do very well when things go in a live stream. There are some great new softwares and things like that that also make it like help. Like one of the things that we see, especially with Nick Nimmin with his location, is that his internet, his power is not always awesome, and things can happen. He's in Thailand, so you know a bit of a storm happens and their power goes out. So what is your feeling on, like right now we're using StreamYard, but there's Restream, there's Melon, there's EBMux, there's so many options. What is your feeling on utilizing these sorts of third-party softwares?
I think it's fine. I think that, use what you have available to you. They all have free versions, but there's also OBS where if you are a power user and can figure out and put the time to dedicate to learn it, it's honestly in some ways more powerful than all of them. It's just, what do you feel comfortable using? For me, I use Restream personally, and I use it because I like how easy it is. If I want to bring on a guest, I don't have to like change everything and have a bad experience for my audience. But with those third parties, I can have a virtual camera, which may be a little more technical. Basically, it lets me have
a virtual camera from OBS into StreamYard.
Exactly. And all that lets you do is have all those effects from that one app and bring them into another. So you get the best of both worlds. And for me, I say use what works best for you. Obviously, they all have free versions. Give it a shot. Maybe there's affiliate links in the description down below if you want to check them out and help out Chantel. And if not,
there could be. There might be. I don't even know. I'll have to look. There might be a StreamYard one there.
And if not, that's a challenge for Chantel. Look at me challenging you now on your own stream.
Do you know what? I think it's par for the course now.
I'm making you work on your own stream.
Yeah. I should just have a notepad, because every guest that comes on, I learn something as well. So I live stream at least 2 hours a week, every week for the last 5 years on one channel, but over the last sort of 10 to 12 years in various places. I'm still constantly learning new ways to change things or up things, because I learned a way to do something. So OBS is my comfort zone. So when I very, 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 very first started live streaming back in the day, I learned OBS, and it was a huge learning curve. But the advantage with OBS, it's free. It can be used on Mac or PC and Linux as well, I think. I don't know anything about Linux, but I don't know barely anything about Mac. But you've got all this thing, and you can make it as simple or as hard as you want. So when I very first started, I had a single webcam, and I wanted the chat on the screen because back in the day on YouTube, the live stream chat didn't stay. Like if you watched a replay, there was no chat, whereas now there is. And things change and things evolve. Whereas now I've got 3 cameras going in and what have you. Thank you, Andrew, for those links. I will add those in later. So now you've got now I've got 3 cameras. So like right now I'll show one, and it's because I've got it set up as a virtual camera going from OBS, which is easier for switching scenes. Then a lot of these softwares are great if you are static. But the second you need multiple cameras for something, not awesome. I think they're wonderful for guests, but here we go. Like, I'm just checking my desk here because this is my desk view. So I'll just make it big. There you go. So that's my desk view. And we were talking about making everything as simple as what you have. I literally have that desk view is a C920 webcam with an USB extension clamped onto my light fitting.
Hey, if it works, that's all that matters. Like, I
Yeah.
love little hacks like that. Like, I use this a lot, and this is just a
That's what
desk
I've got.
clamp.
That's what I've got. That's it. That's the exact clamp.
And it's
I
so
love those
useful.
clamps.
This thing is like, I got this for $12. It might be a little bit more, but obviously
Yep.
I know what I purchased it for. But
Yep.
you just thread this to the bottom of your camera. You can get a phone mount and you can thread it that way. You can hang this, you can clamp this to so many different things. Like, if I wanted a different view, I could use my little light here. I could just
Yep.
like me trying to give good audio while I'm going through this. I could just do this, and all of a sudden I could have a unique view, because guess what? This right here, you can't see it anymore. And
Yep.
it's just a different way to do things.
It's just, and the thing, like, it's so easy to go, right, I need like the expensive microphone, and I need a Rodecaster Pro, and I need, you know, like all these things that people think they need for their live streams. But $12 clamp to you know, to attach to something, an old webcam that actually failed and now magically works again. I don't know what happened. And, you know, like it stopped working for 2 years, and I went to throw it out, and I thought, you know what? I'm just going to test it. And I was just like, you work. Okay.
That's another fun thing about technology. Sometimes you think it's dead, and then it's like, haha, I'm here. It's like, thanks.
I was sleeping. I needed
Pretty
a nap.
much.
When it comes to the first camera that people buy, because ultimately, if people end up live streaming a long time, they're not going to want to continue to do it with their mobile phone. What would be your recommendations for a first camera for live streaming, particularly?
So I have a different approach on this. I know some people. My theory is, when it comes to gear, is when I have enough things that can save me enough time, I buy a new piece of gear. I've had this microphone now since 2016, right? So that's 6 years old. This light I've had for longer than that, and this camera I've also had from 2016. My philosophy on gear is, if it takes me more time to do something, and gear is the reason I'm slowed down, my time's my most valuable asset. So if this webcam or this camera I'm using starts causing me headaches and it's taking me more time than it's worth, upgrade. Another way I try to upgrade is, have I earned enough through streaming? This could be super chats, affiliates, etc., to justify upgrading my cost. Because sometimes it's just fine as it is. You just get gear envy, and man, gear envy can cause you to buy things. You're like, I'm going to use this all the time, and you haven't used that thing since you bought it, and it's just in a box on your shelf, and you're like, why did I buy that?
And it was so expensive.
Yep. And then you're like, I'm going to use it, and I'm not going to regret it, and you still don't.
Yeah. Because buying a camera, especially if you're coming from a mobile or a webcam, buying your first camera can stop you. It can actually stop you from creating if you don't know how to use it, because you don't get the image that you want, or the image that you think that device will give you. I think the biggest things to remember is, like you said earlier, like, audio is more important, as long as your image is clear. And for live streaming, if you are using an external camera that's not a webcam, you need to make sure you've got some way to input it.
For sure.
So it's not just a camera purchase that you have to consider.
I was just going to say, I think you have amazing audio. And the thing is like, sometimes people see, like, I've heard amazing audios just come from, again, a phone. You can have a phone just slightly out of frame, like so, record into it, and you can get really good audio from it. In fact, a lot of times I tell people the last thing you probably should upgrade is the camera. And the reason why is because audio is so important. Learn that. Lighting is so undervalued in the video
Yes.
space, and it's needed for shorts, it's needed for live streams, and it is needed for
Everything.
standard content. You
Yeah.
can't use
It's
a
needed
window
for
for everything.
photos.
Yes, it's used.
It's everything is light. I'm a light nerd.
I used to be afraid of lighting, but it is
Yeah.
so crucial. And when you understand that lighting gets you more of like a look than a camera does, it can
Mm-hmm.
change how you think, right?
Wow.
Because again, we showed earlier, me turning off
Yeah.
my light, you can buy the same webcam, but if the lighting's not good, like if I have the wrong settings, it doesn't matter. Like
Yeah.
this is still an okay image, but I don't think this is the best I could ever do. And I think if I showed up,
It's
Chantel might be
very
like, "Are you okay?"
moody.
I just,
It's
it's the red and the dark colors. I just feel like Batman.
yeah.
But that's
I was gonna say the Dark Lord, but okay, Batman will work.
fair enough either way. But like it's
Yeah.
understanding that lighting is so important and that there are
Yeah.
different ways to light a scene and that you can get
Mm,
more out of audio and lighting. Because again,
yeah.
I've seen so many people say if I just have a better camera, and I'm like, oh, what camera do you have? They're like, oh, I'm just using the camera on my iPhone 13. The cameras we have on smartphones are
They're
better than
fantastic.
they're better than cameras that have won Oscars. It is
Yes.
literally what you do with it and the
Mm-hmm.
stuff you have around it. And again,
Yeah.
lighting can be intimidating, but there are some really nice aperture and Godox lights that are like $50, and for a smartphone or even like some
Yeah.
DSLRs, they're fine. They're more
Yeah.
than fine.
So oh, my little aperture light's off at the back there. I'm thinking, why is my background dark? Because my little aperture light, I must have flicked it off instead of on. But I've got another little aperture just over here. It's just the little tiny M9. It's just a warm or cool setting. That's your options.
This light
And
is
it's
from
just
Joby.
creating just a little mood on that chair. It's nothing like it's, and who was Harris Heller puts out some phenomenal content where he's testing webcams, and just a stock standard like Logitech Brio or just even the C920s, yeah, like this, changing that one little thing with the lighting can actually do a lot. I know that people like sometimes have issues with using their mobile because their mobile, goes off if like it stops being live when somebody gets a call and things like that.
Yeah.
And you can't turn off the internet or you can't turn off your data because you kind of need it to do the job. So in that regard, if you've got an old mobile, like even like you were saying, the iPhone 6 or iPhone 7s, I think the Samsung 8s and 9s have got really good cameras as well. So if you've
Yeah.
got like your previous phone, if unless you're me and the reason you replace them is because they die, and then you're like, please sir, at the telco, I need my new phone like today because this pile of ash is my other phone.
It's what I have left, please. Fair enough.
So, oh well, this has been such a fun talk, Andrew. Sorry, and I know I'm like we're going to ask this and this and this, and it's just like out the window. Let's talk tech.
But I think the tech goes into, we're speaking live. I feel like a lot of times people forget that live streaming and gear can be expensive. Like for 1 second, I'm never going to say gear is not expensive,
Yeah.
but it's understanding what order you need and
Yes.
understanding what it's doing for you. Like
Yeah.
a lot of time people buy the wrong gear or they buy gear out of order and they regret the order they purchased. I always tell people the phrase lights, camera, action came from the silent film days, right? But if they were to update it, it'd probably be mic, lights, camera, action. And camera's
Yeah.
after lights for a reason. And mic on traditional film set rolls first because audio is so crucial. So it's
Yeah.
understanding the history of filmmaking that helps you understand YouTube. And that comes from my background in my film school days.
Wow. I knew about the lights, camera, action, but I never actually thought of throwing mic in at the start.
Yeah.
Because that's the first thing I turn on.
Exactly.
Mics go on, double check all the levels, then the lights go on, then the camera goes on.
Now, obviously, this comes from a person who speaks English and can speak proper. If you need I actually was called out recently, and this is something I always say you can learn something. There was someone in my audience who said, actually, mic's not important to me because I cannot speak. I sign all my streams, and what they do is incredible. So
That's a valid
this is
point.
why I always say use what works for you. And I think that
Yes.
phrase right there can also help a lot of creators out when you try to recommend something. So for them, microphones are least priority. And you know what? I
Yes.
said, you have every right, and I will be quiet. You are 100% right.
That is 100% right. Speaking of people who don't listen to the audio, so whether it is a hearing impairment or whether it is they're in a place they can't listen to audio, what are your feelings on paying for, say, captions or things like that to make sure they're correct?
Depends if you have, like, a lot of times people pay for them because they don't realize how easy it is to do it, edit them for free on YouTube.
Yeah.
I always say, see if you can edit the video caption. Google is like a 90% accuracy rating. Sometimes
It's
on my
definitely getting
videos.
better,
Oh,
except
well,
for the Australian accent. I'll just say that.
fair enough. I obviously have a very Americanized, pretty standard English accent or American
Yep.
English accent. So obviously closed captions may work a little bit better for me.
Yeah.
But I've worked with like a lot of different people and I've used the auto captions that even if it's not 90, it's close to 70. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's like I already have to rewatch the video anyway.
So
Or
throw the
you
captions up and yeah.
Yeah, or use programs like Descript, which is sometimes even better. Or
Yeah.
Adobe, if you're using the Adobe suite, their auto-generated captions are scary good.
See, I haven't looked into those yet. I saw someone put a video about. Was it you? Did you put a video about it?
I put a teaser out, so you might have seen the teaser.
maybe, but it looked very interesting because I use the Adobe suite for my editing when I actually make something that requires editing. And I was like, oh, that looks cool. Because at the moment, for my short content, I use Rev, because most of my videos are under 10 minutes, it's $10. It's like, yep, that's not my problem anymore. But when it comes to like live streams, it's hours. And you don't, it's like $1.25 a minute. I think not. So being able to rely on those Google not translations, it's Google Captions is actually a way to go.
Yeah, and YouTube just added subtitle editors to channels. So if you have
Mm,
in the audience who you trust, they can
yeah,
edit the captions in different languages. And I have a few people that I have been around my channel since like 2017, and they're like,
yeah.
"I'd love to do French subtitles for you." And I gave them that, and obviously I vouched. I have a few friends who speak French. I'm like, "Hey, how is this good?"
Accurate is this?
So far they've added nothing that was nothing very surprising.
Well, because that's the thing. Like when it comes to moderators and giving people access for subtitles in other languages, it has to be somebody that you trust.
For sure.
Because it's like they, they're kind of speaking for you in a way. And if they do something to the subtitles and you can't read it for whatever reason, like it's not your language and you don't know it, YouTube can actually do things like because it changes the metadata on your video. So
For sure.
it can be, depending on what this person has done, it can flag your video. So you really need to have a level of trust. You can't just get any person who has just gone, oh yeah, by the way, I speak Spanish. Random person you've never met. Can I have access to put in Spanish subtitles? And they could fill it with all sorts of stuff that you've got no concept of.
100%. That's why I said it was someone I trusted.
Mm.
Always make sure you are using when you are using like help from someone. Also, make sure to give credit, but
Yeah.
also vouch that it is good. And if you can't, there are things like rev.com, although I know they raise their prices. I mentioned Descript and they're really good.
Yeah.
But use
Descript is
something
really
that works for
interesting.
you. It is. It's again, they're using AI in ways that is really cool to see, but also a little afraid, also terrifying.
The whole, you can type in a word and with what you've previously said, they can make it sound like you.
Yep.
To change. That does, I think it's awesome because I flub stuff all the time. But at the same time, I'm also like, oh, that's terrifying. It's like, it gives me like 1980s sci-fi movie vibes.
Yeah, it is. I want to do a video on Descript, but I also am uncomfortable with like you have to give permission to your voice over, and I'm like, I don't know how much I want to do that. So for
Yeah.
me, I always say that be careful when it comes to what you give permission to.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. And it's very easy to, especially when you're overwhelmed with how much work that you feel you need to be putting in versus what you actually have to be putting in. When somebody puts a hand up to offer help and you're just like, yes, please. And then you've realized, oh, did I trust the right person or the wrong person? Because it is a level of trust. And it's another thing when you're inviting guests onto your shows and things like that. Is that person going to have the right fit for your audience? Is their tone going to be okay? So like I've been in live streams historically where somebody has jumped into the chat, random person, seen that you're using StreamYard, and they're like, where's the StreamYard link? And you're like, what do you mean? And they're like, so I can come on. And you're like, well, I don't know who you are. I'm sorry. That's not how this works.
Yeah.
So you've got to understand that this is your space and it's up to you to decide who has access, and you don't have to feel that pressure. Have you ever felt pressure to either let somebody on or be on somebody else's thing?
For me, I operate on, at least in my personal show or anything where I've done community work, I have hard and fast rules. I let everyone know the rules. If you break them, you're out. So
Yeah.
I set a boundary and a standard, which I think is
Yeah.
very important. It takes maybe 10 minutes to write up a set of rules. You can Google live streaming rules as well. Like there are a lot of people who have free resources and you can change to your needs. I don't feel that pressure because I set the boundary and the expectation. Now, when people ask me to come on a stream, candidly, because of how long I've been on YouTube and how many different channels I've been on where people know me, I get a
Yeah.
lot of requests for that. And so it
Yeah.
is balancing things I feel like I can add value to,
Mm-hmm.
and also just, and I think you know this, balancing things I'm passionate about too. Like when you asked me to come on, it was a no-brainer. You've been on my stream. I've had a great time then. Hopefully you're
Yeah.
having a great
We
time
had a
now.
lot of fun.
Can't put words in your mouth, but hopefully you're having fun.
I am. Yeah.
So I think that's also important is, do you want to do it?
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those tricky balance things yet again, isn't it?
Balance is, if variety is the spice of life, balance is the base.
I like that. I like that. Andrew, we've hit time, believe it or not. It has been, excuse me, I'm all
Flew
raspy now.
by.
I'm like
Wow.
emotional. It has been absolutely wonderful having you on here today. And I really do appreciate the time that you've come in and just so much information that we've just like, I'm like, oh man, there's so much. It's like, so I'm sorry, audience, if you're overwhelmed. But this is the thing with live streams, you can go and you can pick and you can choose and watch little bits and pieces here. There's no, you don't have to watch the whole thing. And that's something else, is to set your own boundaries as a viewer. So Andrew, thank you so much. And next week we have Tiffany Lee Bymaster, aka Coach Glitter, coming to join us to talk about live streaming. And I will see you all then. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Kathy. Thanks, everyone live. And thanks, everyone in the replay.
Oh, and Andrew's links are in the description. Sorry, Andrew. I forgot
No
to
worries. Take
plug
care.
that.